In a quiet hospital in the United States, a nurse's compassionate decision to help a man in need would lead to an unexpected and life-altering consequence. The man she assisted was none other than the father of Karoline Leavitt, a prominent figure in American politics. What seemed like a simple act of kindness soon spiraled into a series of events that would change the nurse's life forever. The decision to help him, though driven by empathy, cost her the job she had worked so hard to keep. Little did she know, her actions would spark a wave of change, both in her personal life and in the wider community. As the news spread, the nurse, whose name was Emily Harper, found herself at the center of a media storm. Many hailed her as a hero, while others criticized her for putting her career at risk. Emily had always prided herself on her dedication to her patients, but this time, she had done more than just follow protocol. She had acted on her conscience. It all started when Karoline Leavitt's father, struggling with a serious health issue, was admitted to the hospital. Emily was assigned to care for him, and during her shifts, she quickly realized how deeply the man was suffering. Not just from his illness, but from a sense of abandonment. His family, busy with their political lives, couldn't be there for him in the way he needed. Emily, with her calming presence and unwavering empathy, offered him the comfort and attention he hadn't received in months. But when Karoline learned of the bond they had formed, she was furious. She accused Emily of overstepping professional boundaries, and the hospital, caught in the crossfire of political pressures, made the decision to terminate her employment. Emily, devastated but resolute, was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered career. However, what many didn't realize was that Emily had gained something much more valuable: her sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't turn back, but she also knew that helping people wasn't something she could just stop doing. The incident had awakened a side of her she hadn't fully understood before, and it sparked a movement she never expected. But the story didn't end there. As Emily began to rebuild her life, she learned that Karoline's father had a secret, one that could change everything. His past, intertwined with powerful figures, held a key that Emily was about to unlock, setting off a chain of events that would reshape not only her future, but the future of many others. As Emily grappled with the fallout from her dismissal, she received an unexpected letter. It was from Karoline Leavitt herself. To Emily's surprise, the letter was not a scathing reprimand, but a carefully worded message expressing regret and a hint of something else, something deeper. Karoline wrote that her father had left her a series of journals, documenting his life in a way no one, not even his family, had ever known. In one of these journals, there were mentions of a secret deal made decades ago, involving powerful figures in politics, figures whose names had long been forgotten. Intrigued and with nothing left to lose, Emily contacted Karoline. A tense conversation followed, but eventually, they agreed to meet. Karoline, though still wary of Emily's intentions, seemed to soften as they talked. She revealed that her father had confided in Emily during his illness, speaking of regrets and hidden alliances from his past, all of which had been buried under years of silence. There was one thing, however, that stood out: her father's involvement in a controversial political maneuver years ago that could have far-reaching consequences if exposed. Emily, initially overwhelmed, soon realized the gravity of the situation. Her actions had inadvertently put her at the center of a mystery that could unravel much more than just a career. It could uncover a network of corruption and deception that spanned across generations. The more Emily listened, the more she understood that the journal's contents were not just about her patient's past. They were about a system that had been carefully constructed to protect those at the top, regardless of the cost to those beneath them. Now, Emily faced a choice. She could walk away, live a quiet life, and try to forget everything that had happened, or she could confront the truth and expose the system that had allowed so many to suffer in silence. But the deeper she dug into Karoline's father's past, the more dangerous it became. People didn't like secrets being uncovered, especially when they had the power to ruin careers and legacies. And then, one night, as Emily sat reviewing the journal, a knock came at her door. Standing in front of her was someone she hadn't expected to see. A figure from her past, someone who had been involved in the very system she was now beginning to expose. The man held a letter in his hand, a letter that would force Emily to make a decision she wasn't ready for. The man standing at Emily's door was none other than Detective Jacob Turner, a familiar face from her past. He had been a regular visitor during her early years as a nurse, checking in on patient cases that had caught his attention. But tonight, his presence felt different, more urgent, almost like a warning. "Emily," he said, his voice low, "I need to talk to you. It's about the journals. You're in danger." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, in danger? What are you talking about?" Jacob glanced around, as if checking for anyone who might be watching, then stepped inside. "I'm not here to scare you, but you need to listen. The people involved in what Karoline's father was part of, they don't want the truth coming out. And if you keep digging, they'll make sure you don't get the chance to expose it." Emily stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. She had known that the situation was delicate, but the implication that her life could be at risk made everything feel much more real. "I thought you were with the police. Why are you telling me this?" Jacob sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not the same cop you knew. I've seen what these people are capable of, and I've made a few enemies along the way. But you need to understand, this goes beyond just politics. There's something much bigger at play here. Your involvement with Karoline's father. It's not a coincidence." Emily's mind raced as she tried to process everything. "What do you mean? What's bigger than this?" Jacob leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just about a political scandal. It's about a cover-up that's been going on for decades. It involves a series of deaths, unexplained disappearances, and people who were erased from history. And now that you're connected to it, you're not just a nurse anymore. You're part of the story, and someone wants to make sure you're silenced." The room seemed to close in on Emily as the gravity of the situation began to settle over her. She wasn't just fighting for her career anymore. She was fighting for her life. But there was something else, a spark of determination igniting within her. She had spent her entire career helping others, but this was different. This was bigger than just one patient or one job. She had the truth in her hands, and it was a truth that could bring down the powerful forces that had controlled so much for so long. "I can't just walk away," Emily said, her voice firm, despite the fear creeping up her spine. "If I stop now, everything I've learned will be buried again, and no one will ever know what really happened." Jacob looked at her, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're sure about this?" Emily nodded. "I'm sure, but I'm going to need your help. I can't do this alone." The detective hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke. "All right, but you need to be careful. These people don't play by the rules. And if they think you're a threat, they'll stop at nothing to get rid of you." Just as Emily was about to respond, the lights in her apartment flickered, and a loud knock came at the door. Both she and Jacob froze, staring at the door in silence. Then, without another word, the knock came again, this time more forceful. Emily's heart raced. Whoever was on the other side wasn't there for a friendly conversation. Emily and Jacob exchanged a glance, the unspoken fear hanging between them. Jacob motioned for Emily to stay quiet as he slowly moved toward the door. He pressed his ear against it, listening intently. The knock came once more, louder this time, almost demanding. "Stay back," Jacob whispered, his hand hovering over the door handle. He checked through the peephole, but his face immediately tightened in disbelief. "It's them." Emily's pulse quickened. She knew this moment would come. She just didn't think it would happen so soon. Without another word, Jacob gestured for Emily to step toward the back of the apartment. "We need to leave. Now." But just as they turned to escape, the door burst open with a violent force. Two men in black suits entered, their faces impassive, their eyes cold. They didn't need to introduce themselves. Emily knew immediately who they were, the ones who would stop at nothing to silence her. "You've gone too far, Miss Harper," one of the men said, his voice calm but threatening. "We gave you a chance to walk away, but you refused. Now you'll pay the price." Jacob stepped forward, standing between Emily and the intruders. "Not today. You're not taking her." A tense standoff ensued. Emily felt a surge of panic, but it was quickly replaced by a steady resolve. She couldn't let fear control her now. The truth needed to come out no matter the cost. But before the situation could escalate further, Emily made a decision. "No more threats. No more intimidation," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "You want me to stop? You'll have to do it the hard way." The two men eyed her with disdain, but Emily knew that they were underestimating her. She had the journals. She had the truth. And in that moment, she realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She had already made the choice to expose the corruption, even if it meant risking everything. Just as the men began to advance, Jacob acted, pulling Emily toward the back door. But before they could escape, one of the men lunged toward them, grabbing Emily's arm with a vice-like grip. "I don't think so," he sneered. In a split second, Emily twisted free, breaking free of his hold. She kicked over a nearby chair, creating just enough chaos to break their focus. With Jacob covering her, they sprinted toward the alley behind the building, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. As they rounded the corner, Emily's heart pounded, but there was a sense of liberation in her chest. They couldn't stop her now. The truth would come out. Weeks later, the news broke. The story of Karoline Leavitt's father, his involvement in a high-stakes political scandal, and the network of corruption spanning decades was exposed to the world. It wasn't just Emily's fight anymore. It was a movement, and the people who had tried to silence her were now facing the consequences. Emily may have lost her job, but she had gained something far more valuable: her voice. She was no longer just a nurse. She was an advocate for justice, and her actions had changed the course of many lives, including her own. In the end, Emily Harper didn't just survive. She became the person who refused to be silenced.